King of France and of Navarre. Louis XIV was born on 5 September 1638 in the Château de Saint-Germain-en-Laye to Louis XIII and Anne of Austria, and bore the traditional title of French heirs apparent, Dauphin. At the time of his birth, his parents had been married for 23 years. His mother had experienced 4 stillbirths between 1619 and 1631. Leading contemporaries thus regarded him as a divine gift, and his birth a miracle of God. Louis's relationship with his mother was uncommonly affectionate for the time. Contemporaries and eyewitnesses claimed that the Queen would spend all her time with Louis. Both were greatly interested in food and theater, and it is highly likely that Louis developed these interests through his close relationship with his mother. This long-lasting and loving relationship can be evidenced by excerpts in Louis's journal entries, such as, "Nature was responsible for the first knots which tied me to my mother. But attachments formed later by shared qualities of the spirit are far more difficult to break than those formed merely by blood." It was his mother who gave Louis his belief in the absolute and divine power of his monarchical rule. Sensing imminent death in the spring of 1643, King Louis XIII decided to put his affairs in order for his 4-year-old son Louis XIV. Not trusting the judgment of his Spanish wife Queen Anne, who would normally have become the sole regent of France, the king decreed that a regency council would rule on his son's behalf, with Anne at its head. Louis XIII died on 14 May 1643. On 18 May, Queen Anne had her husband's will annulled by the Parlement de Paris, a judicial body of nobles and high-ranking clergy, and she became sole regent. She exiled her husband's ministers Chavigny and Boutillier, and appointed the Count of Brienne as her Minister of Foreign Affairs. Anne kept the direction of religious policy strongly in hand until her son's majority in 1661. She appointed Cardinal Mazarin as chief minister, giving him the daily administration of policy. She continued the policies of her late husband and Cardinal Richelieu, despite their persecution of her, in order to win absolute authority in France and victory abroad for her son. Anne protected Mazarin by exiling her followers, the Duke of Beaufort and Marie de Rohan, who conspired against him in 1643. The best example of Anne's loyalty to France was her treatment of one of Richelieu's men, the Chancellor Pierre Séguier. Séguier had brusquely interrogated Anne in 1637, following the discovery that she was giving military secrets to her father in Spain, and Anne was virtually under house arrest for years. By keeping the effective Séguier in his post, Anne sacrificed her own feelings for the interests of France and her son Louis. The Queen sought peace among Catholic nations after France's win over Spain. Her policies alienated Protestant allies like the Netherlands, which made peace with Spain in 1648. That year, the Peace of Westphalia ended the 30 Years' War. France gained Alsace, key bishoprics, and influence over German states, paving the way for the League of the Rhine. As the 30 Years' War ended, France was plunged into civil unrest with the Fronde, 1648 to 1653, a series of revolts driven by nobles resisting royal centralization. Queen Anne and Cardinal Mazarin, following Richelieu's legacy, tried to strengthen the monarchy, clashing with the Parlement and aristocracy. Anne was fiercely devoted to absolute monarchy, even imprisoning opponents to ensure her son Louis XIV inherited full authority. Riots erupted in Paris when Anne tried taxing the Parlement. The arrest of Pierre Broussel sparked public outrage, forcing Anne to release him and flee the capital with the young king. Military leader Condé helped Anne briefly restore control, but his ambition led to a power struggle. Anne arrested Condé and his allies, prompting a noble coalition that exiled Mazarin and placed Anne under house arrest. The conflict shaped Louis XIV's lifelong mistrust of Paris and the nobility. The Fronde ended in 1653 when Mazarin returned and resumed power. Anne's alliance with Mazarin, rumored to include a secret marriage, remained strong. Though Louis loved Mazarin's niece Marie Mancini, Anne forced him to marry the Spanish princess Maria Theresa, securing peace and setting the stage for Bourbon claims to the Spanish throne. Louis XIV took full control of France in 1661, shocking his court by ruling without a chief minister and demanding absolute authority. Facing a near-bankrupt treasury, he appointed Jean-Baptiste Colbert as finance minister, who crushed corruption, cut debt, and boosted royal revenues by reforming taxes and improving efficiency. Louis transformed France's army into a disciplined, professional force under Louvois, while Colbert drove economic growth with new industries and a push for exports. Louis also streamlined laws with the Code Louis, unifying France's legal system, and issued the controversial Code Noir to regulate slavery in the colonies. Despite his reforms, Louis's fiscal policies heavily burdened peasants, as nobles remained mostly exempt until late in his reign. His reign marked the rise of absolute monarchy, centralized power, and a stronger, wealthier France poised to dominate Europe. Part 2 will come out soon. While you wait, subscribe.